Good morning. Welcome to all my brothers and sisters and siblings in the indwelling Christ. I'd like to talk to you about something today. You know, people often say that they're afraid of ghosts, but something I've realized for myself, and I think it's true for most of us as well, is that we're actually far more haunted by our emails, our deadlines, and that lingering voice in the back of the head that says, did you lock the door? Did you forget to turn off the coffee maker? Do they like me?
Should be the man whose thoughts would hold in hours communion with the dead. Invasion or any call, the spirits from their golden day. Except like them thou too canst say, my spirit is at peace with all, but the heart is full of din and doubt beside the portal ways. Make us listen at the gates and hear the house jar within. How pure in heart and sound in head, what divine affections hold, should be the man who thus would hold in hours communion with the dead.
Let's start by saying the denial and affirmation for today. So say along with me. I deny that death is the end, that love is lost, or that spirit ever abandons us. And the affirmation, I affirm that life shines forever, love transcends all boundaries, and spirit dances through every moment, guiding, uplifting, and inspiring all that I do. All right. As Stan mentioned, the title of the talk today is Life Beyond Death, Embracing Spirit in the Season of Turning. The term spirit is, in German, Geist, which is where we get the word ghost. People sometimes say they're afraid of ghosts. But I realize for myself, and I think it's true for most of us, that we are actually far more haunted by our emails, our deadlines, and that little voice in the back of the head that says, did you lock the door? Did you forget to turn off the coffee maker? Do they like me? Well, listen, if you survive your inbox today, you've already stared down more terrifying spirits than anything in a haunted house. You're basically a professional exorcist at this point. After all that, a friendly ghost can be a breath of fresh air. But I'd like to share brightest blessings with you today because it's a joy for me, and I hope it is for you, to gather in this space, in this sacred season of turning, when the veil between heaven and earth is especially thin. Around this time of year, the ancient Celts, my ancestors, celebrated Samhain, a festival honoring ancestors as the harvest season ended and the darker half of the year began. A season when they believed that the veil between worlds was the thinnest. Christianity also later wove these traditions into what's known as All Saints and All Souls Day on November 1st and 2nd. And today, cultures worldwide continue to honor this tradition of transition. Dia de los Muertos in Mexico, for example, celebrates ancestors with altars, candles, and marigolds. But across time and tradition, especially in this season, people have reflected on the same message.
Hello and welcome to our Halloween edition of Would You Believe? I'm sure every house in the country has had visits this evening from masked ghosts and goblins seeking help for Halloween parties. They might think that all that is a purely pagan festival, but actually is closely linked with Christianity. And here to tell us something of those connections is Father Sean O'Dinn, a Benedictine monk who came out from Glenstall, not on your broomstick, Sean. Sean, is there a sort of dancing at Lunasa about all this kind of thing? So the misty meeting between pagan and Christian worlds?
Yes, there certainly is. Samhain, Halloween, is a very significant date in the Celtic calendar because the Celts, as far as we know, divided their year into two halves. The dark half going from Samhain to Bealtaine, that's the 1st of May, and the bright half from Bealtaine to Samhain.
That's sort of the old year and the new.
Yes. So that tonight is actually New Year's night. We begin the year tonight. And this is the reason why we have so much predictions. For instance, in the bar in Brack, you have the ring, and whoever gets the ring will be married within the year, because it's at the beginning of the year that you predict, you want to know what's going to happen for the rest of the year. So this is really the new year.
So legitimately
Yes.
we can say in Ireland, Happy New Year today.
Yes. And it's...
And the Tuatha De Danann, what part do they play in all this?
Yes, the Tuatha De Danann are they're the supernatural people. I think that the basic idea is that in Ireland, traditionally, we have two population groups. We have the normal, the ordinary people on the surface of the land, and we have the supernatural people, the gods and goddesses of the Celts, also the Fomoric, and possibly also the dead, who are living in the sacred hills and sacred sites such as Bruna Boinga, Cunuggrania, Cunugglishi, all over the country. And these are very important because traditionally they've been believed to be responsible for the fertility of the land. They make the corn grow and ripen, they make the grass grow, they give milk to the cows. And they could cause famine if you didn't treat them correctly. So the human population had to treat them with care, make little offerings. For instance, loaves. They laid loaves at the foot of the sacred hills, and even the bar in Brack itself may have been an offering.
And if you didn't?
And if you didn't, they could cause ill luck.
And is that to do with sort of giving fruit and giving nuts and so on, with the kids going from door to door?
It is. It seems to me that this procession of people from door to door collecting fruits and bread and money and so forth, this is the Tuatha De Danann coming back from the other world, asking for their dues because they have given the harvest.
And
now they want recognition.
When did we Christianize all this then? Or when did the church get into it?
Yes. Well, our first knowledge of it really comes from about the 9th and 10th century. All Saints came first in the 9th century, and then at a later stage, about the 10th century, we have All Souls from the Benedict monastery of Cluny in France. Curiously enough, it was quite near Lugdunum, the city of lions, which is really Lugdunum, the old Celtic god Lugh, from which lunacy comes.
So it's really the church is then borrowing Celtic clothes.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
See, both ideas are very much the same. The Celts were talking about the other world. At this particular time, the other world and this world came together. The barriers were broken down. Now, this corresponds to the Christian idea also. At these two feasts of the year, All Saints and All Souls, we're very conscious of the other world. And there are two divisions from the Christian point of view. The saints are in heaven, and the souls of the dead are in purgatory.
And
it's all the other world.
Now, the Americans, of course, do this now. One recognises the pumpkin and so on in American films.
Yes.
So did we export all this?
Yes, all this was exported. Immigrants took it over. Originally, of course, now it was a turnip, you know, with a candle lighting inside it. And these are the two that are done coming back to collect their dues.
Father Sean, thanks very much, and happy Celtic New Year.
That life is eternal. Love persists eternally, and spirit is always near. Today we gather to celebrate life and memory, and to remember the beautiful truth that death is not the end for us or for those who we love. While this may seem like an abstract consequences, it has, like an abstract concept, it has very real consequences for us here and now. It changes how we live and how we relate to all that is around us. As Jesus said, as reported by John in his gospel account, chapter 11, verses 25 and 26, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die.
I think the thing that we are confronted with immediately in dealing with the paranormal behavior of a person and the extrasensory experiences of people and the psychic phenomena is that man is and always has been a curious creature. So man has invariably been excited by and impressed with phenomena of all kinds. And Jesus himself was at times disturbed about this, that people were more concerned with the signs and wonders than with trying to get the inner experience. Now, the reason this is of concern is that when one is always looking for phenomena, he becomes extremely vulnerable to delusion, if not outright fraud, and even more importantly, he becomes the victim of self-delusion, because the subconsciousness of man is such that it will almost invariably in time accommodate us with an experience if we have a deep enough desire to have it. So if it is the thing to see an image or a vision of Jesus, one can actually conjure up in his subconscious mind the image of Jesus. Now that doesn't mean that one person did not have that image, but it probably implies that because of our intense curiosity and our intense interest in phenomena, quite often we delude ourselves. And this is one of the problems that compound compound the difficulties in any research into this field of psychic phenomena.
But across time and tradition, especially in this season, people have reflected on the same message, that life is eternal, love persists eternally, and spirit is always near. Today we gather to celebrate life and memory, and to remember the beautiful truth that death is not the end for us or for those who we love. While this may seem like an abstract consequences, it has like an abstract concept, it has very real consequences for us here and now. It changes how we live and how we relate to all that is around us. As Jesus said, as reported by John in his gospel account, chapter 11, verses 25 and 26, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Unity teaches us to read this metaphysically, that eternal life is not only a promise for after death, but it's a reality that is present here and now. Every thought of love, every act of kindness, every spark of divine creativity is the resurrection in action. Fillmore teaches it's literally the second coming of Christ. So yes, death is a transition from one state of consciousness to another. But spirit never stops, never ceases its flow. So in a sense, there is no death. No one ever dies. Mystics throughout the ages have talked about what happens to us after we die, and actually, their accounts align quite closely with what modern near-death experiencers report.
I'm often asked by many persons, what do I believe about spirit contact? Do you believe it is possible to contact the spirit of your departed mother or whatever? Is it possible? Now, this has always been the question that motivates the researcher. And it's a good question. Is it possible? But there is a philosophic question that is rarely asked, and that is it advisable? From my own personal experience, and as I say, I haven't dabbled a lot in it, I've had enough observation of it, I've seen, witnessed enough to accept without any question, or at least to my satisfaction, that it is possible to have spirit contact with departed ones. I fully admit, and I'm glad to say that there are an awful lot of people in the field who admit also that there's a lot of fraud involved, and so there's a lot of self-delusion. And one sometimes has a very difficult time sorting it out in his own consciousness to know when he's really getting a message and when he's getting the fulfillment of his own subconscious desires. But I believe it's possible. But on the other hand, I believe it is highly inadvisable for a lot of reasons. Even if just the realization that my departed mother is out there somewhere and I want to talk to her, if for no other reason than that, I believe that the passing through what we call death is an ongoingness. And whether we believe in reincarnation or constant progression, as the spiritualists would say, I believe that we should loose them and let them go. They must continue on, and any attempt on our part to hold on, to try to receive messages from them, though it may be very fulfilling to us, it's not really as fulfilling as we think. It only continues our instability of grief. But though we may feel personally fulfilled, it can be, and I believe is, very disturbing to the ongoingness of the person. But for other reasons, I think it is dangerous and inadvisable. Because I believe there is a tendency to assume that because a person has passed over to the other side, the words that are so often used, that he thus knows a lot more than we know. As a matter of fact, he may know less. Or at least I doubt very much if he has achieved any great wisdom because he passed on, you see. And to be asking them for guidance and what would you do and so forth, actually puts us in a position of losing our own integrity, of losing our own self-confidence, our own self-control, our own self-reverence. And that's dangerous. Much in the same way as a person may lose it by investing all power and authority in a teacher or a teaching or a psychic or a guru or whatever. Ultimately, we must come to know ourselves and to go through the process of progressively letting go dependence upon things and people. And when a person is passed on, it's a very good time to accept the dictum of a greater wisdom in life than our own, that it's time to let go. We may hang on all through life, but it's time to let go. And it can be a blessing if we will let go and move on.
18th century mystic Emanuel Swedenborg taught that when we die, we awaken immediately in a spiritual body, and we feel more alive and conscious than ever. Near-death experiencers report their experiences being more real than their waking life. Not dream-like at all, but more real. According to Swedenborg, we enter the world of spirits, a realm between heaven and hell where our true inner character is gently revealed and our outer masks fall away. But rather than being judged, we naturally gravitate towards the communities that match our deepest loves. Our unselfish love draws us to heaven, while our self-centered love leads us to what he calls hell. But these are not places and they're not judgments. They're states of consciousness. Swedenborg calls heaven a living, harmonious, grand human, where each soul fills a unique purpose, and even true marriage, the love of a true marriage, continues in the world of spirits and actually becomes even more divine. Life in the spiritual world is not static, but it's in eternal growth in love, wisdom, and joyful usefulness. Service continues after death. All guided by God's desire for freedom and transformation.
Orthodox 18th century notions of the afterlife were rather simplistic. On the day of judgment, the graves open, and each person is resurrected with a physical body to face a celestial bureaucracy. Swedenborg refuted these notions in several books. This greatly upset traditionalists, such as his friend, Reverend Ferelius.
You are a learned man, sir, versed in scriptures. Surely you can understand, despite whatever things your spirits tell you. It is like our courts of law. On the day of judgment, the pious are rewarded, the wicked are punished.
Now, each of us is his own judge, for heaven and hell are also within us. We are each living eternity now.
Swedenborg wrote that we experience heaven and hell on earth, and that the worlds beyond the grave are extensions of the psychological realities of daily life.
Death is not an extinction, but a continuation of life, merely a transition from one state to another.
In several visions, Swedenborg experienced the process of dying and saw others enter the afterlife. He said that immediately following death, there's a period of self-discovery. The social masks worn on earth dissolve away, and the true self is revealed. Each person then shapes his own eternity to correspond with his real inner nature. Some become irrational, driven by fear and greed. They are in a state Swedenborg called hell. Hell is a psychological condition which corresponds to the suffering we experience on earth when we allow ourselves to be driven by the blind greed of our own egos. There are no devils here to inflict punishments, since in the state of hell, each person acts out his own malice by tormenting others.
Really, sir? No devil?
But, your lordship, you mean to say there aren't no devils?
No devils. No demons. Such is the equilibrium of everything in the other life, that one brings punishment and torment unto himself.
After death, others find within themselves a psychological state Swedenborg called heaven. It is a joyous condition, a state of expanded awareness, of perceiving more and more of the grand plan of creation. The heaven which Swedenborg experienced corresponds to deeds, not creeds. So persons of many races and religions form the societies of heaven, which Swedenborg often called the Church of the Lord.
My friend, how can your so-called Church of the Lord include heathens and idolaters? Surely the Lord will cast them into the pit of hell.
The Church of the Lord consists of all those who have lived in the good of charity according to their own belief. The Church of the Lord is universal.
Good day, my friend. No, I'm sorry. I cannot say that I have. Do you acknowledge yourself to be a sinner?
Certainly, as long as I have to carry around this sinful body.
My friend, quite a number of people think that your sole purpose in promulgating this new theological system has been to make a name for yourself. If such be the case, you ought now to do the world and yourself a justice to retract it, either in whole or in part, especially if you cannot expect to derive any additional advantage in this world, which you will soon be leaving.
When you enter eternity, you will see everything. And then you and I shall have much to talk about.
Before their parting, Swedenborg presented Reverend Ferelius with one of the last copies of his book, Heavenly Secrets. But Swedenborg was to leave another minister a somewhat more unusual token of his abilities.
Reading this, I felt my heart strangely warmed.
The England in which Swedenborg spent his last months witnessed the growth of several new Protestant sects. One of these was Methodism. Its founder was John Wesley.
That he had taken away my sins, even mine, and saved me from the law of sin and death. Every man and...
A letter for you, sir.
This is highly peculiar. It was only days ago. A most curious letter was delivered to me. I remember it exactly. It said, "Sir, I have been informed in the world of spirits that you have a strong desire to converse with me. I shall be happy to see you if you will favor me with a visit. I am, sir, your humble servant, Emanuel Swedenborg." I felt exceedingly astonished, for I had been strongly impressed with a desire to see and converse with this gentleman. I sent a reply at once, stating I am at present closely occupied in preparing for a 6-month journey, but will do the pleasure of waiting upon Mr. Swedenborg soon after my return to London. And now, this. Sir, I am sorry to reply that your proposed visit will be too late, as next month, on March 29th, 1772, I shall enter the world of spirits, never more to return. Your humble servant, Emmanuel Swedenborg.
What time is it?
It's 5 o'clock, your lordship.
That is good. I thank you. God bless you.
Andrew Jackson Davis in the 19th century, often known as the seer of Poughkeepsie, who was a major influence on the spiritualist movement, he believed that death was a natural transition into a higher, more refined state of existence. When we die, we gently separate from the physical body and again awaken in a spiritual body within what he called the Summerland, a beautiful progressive afterlife realm that, again, notice, reflects our inner development. Again, there's no eternal damnation. Instead, every soul continues to learn, to grow, and evolve into higher spheres of life, supported by loving spirits and guided by divine laws of harmony. In the Summerland, we reunite with loved ones, continue our relationships, and even build homes and communities suited to our characters and desires. Davis saw the afterlife as an endless ascent, again, towards greater wisdom, love, and unity with the divine order of the universe. In both Swedenborg and Davis, we see that the afterlife is not an ending, but a continuation of our spiritual journey.
In many respects, Davis was one of the earliest and most popular figures to talk about heaven as a place that was populated by all the world's people. And implicitly, what Davis was saying was that salvation was available to every individual, from every religion, from every walk of life. It was Davis who communicated to people very early on that your spiritual search didn't depend upon anything that came before us and didn't depend upon the establishment of great institutions of learning or cathedrals. You could search for God in your barn, at your kitchen table, by your stove, in your workshop. That's what he had done. It was in the trappings of ordinary life. Davis reflected back to people their highest ideals or hopes for themselves.
Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, believed that death is a temporary interruption in the soul's ongoing journey towards spiritual mastery. Again, notice the theme of the ongoing spiritual journey. Fillmore taught that our true self is the eternal Christ nature within, and the goal of spiritual growth is to so fully express divine life that we eventually overcome death altogether. After physical death, he believed the soul continues to develop in the spiritual realms and may reincarnate if needed to learn, to heal, or unfold its divine potential. Again, Fillmore did not see heaven or hell as places of reward or punishment, but as states of consciousness we create through our thoughts and degrees of alignment with God. So ultimately, he believed that humanity is destined to awaken to its divine nature and eventually attain immortality by fully embodying the life, love, and power of spirit. H. Emily Cady, on the other hand, did not teach reincarnation. And actually, a chapter in Lessons in Truth about death that she wrote was later edited out of the Unity version of Lessons in Truth, in fact. Little interesting anecdote from Unity history there. But as Cady emphasized, life is one and continuous, even though there come a seeming break, which we call death. She believed that death is simply dropping the physical body. Our true self is spiritual, eternal, and one with God. So we continue living consciously after death, just as naturally as moving from one room to another. After death, the soul, again, keeps unfolding, learning, and growing closer to God, because spiritual development does not stop with the grave. Fillmore and Cady's messages echo Jesus' own affirmation in Luke 20:38. God is not the God of the dead, but of the living, for to him all are alive. Modern near-death experiences, again, strongly relate with these metaphysical insights. Dr. Eben Alexander, a Harvard-trained neurosurgeon, experienced a profound near-death experience during a week-long coma, which was caused by a rare bacterial meningitis that proved to him that human experience continues beyond the grave.
So sometimes our whole worldview gets shaken at the very core. And in my particular case, that came in the form of a near-death experience, a week spent in coma from bacterial meningitis. And coming back from that, I had to completely change my view as an academic neurosurgeon with more than 20 years of experience into the relationship between the mind and consciousness and what consciousness truly is. And I think that is one of the things that we're investigating in research here at the Monroe Institute that is absolutely fascinating, because the old paradigm of seeing that the brain and physical reality give rise to consciousness is not what I saw in my week in coma. And in fact, all of my studies since then, trying to understand my experience deep in coma, leads me to believe that in fact consciousness is the primary entity in the universe. And we need to understand much better how consciousness generates this apparent reality. And so what I've found is that in many ways, rethinking my view of consciousness and mind and brain and seeing the primary role of consciousness involved becoming much more of a pioneer into a new way of thinking that I think many writers and many philosophers, scientists have been going somewhat in this direction over the last few years. But it really is all coalescing now that with the work we do here at Monroe Institute and with a lot of thinking about extended consciousness, that is consciousness outside of physical brain and outside of physical reality, is very much a fact of life. And here at the Monroe Institute, I see that Bob Monroe was very much a pioneer in this kind of thinking. He was way ahead of his time. And now we're trying to do the work to catch up with the vision that he had in looking at really the unlimited possibilities inherent in human consciousness.
In fact, for him, his experience in particular was not explainable by activity in the brain, because the meningitis had shut down his spine and brain, and there was no activity. But despite his brain being inactive, he reported a journey into a realm of unconditional love and clarity. He described his journey as progressing through 3 distinct stages, and these are stages that are talked about in near-death experience report after near-death experience report, even going all the way back. We have near-death experience reports from ancient Egypt, and these are all very similar. So it begins with what Alexander calls a earthworm's eye view. This is a realm of murky confusion, which Dr. Alexander interpreted as a base level of consciousness. It was like a tube, and sort of wiggling through a tube with a light at the end. Dr. Alexander points out that he was then guided to a next stage, a higher state, once he broke through the light, where he underwent a panoramic and compassionate life review, where he perceived the consequences of his actions on others. This again aligns with Emanuel Swedenborg's vision of a spiritual society, suggesting that identity and awareness still persist after bodily death. I think of this stage, this life review, as, if you've never seen the Albert Brooks movie Defending Your Life, it's a great film, and I think it's very close to what actually happens to us. So check it out. Albert Brooks, Meryl Streep.
The show will begin in 30 seconds. Welcome to the Past Lives Pavilion. In a moment, you will be asked to place your right hand on the plate next to you. An image of yourself in a former life will soon appear. When you have seen enough, simply remove your hand from the plate. Since we want to be fair and accommodate everyone, you will be limited to 5 past lives only. Thank you. Please place your hand on the plate now.
What the hell is this?
Elizabeth, time for supper, darling.
Be there in a moment, Mumsy.
What the hell's going on here?
Come on, men, to the castle!
It's incredible!
Who are you?
I'm Prince Valiant!
Really?
Yeah! Who are you?
Dinner.
I was a prince, I was a whaler, I was a tailor. God, it was the most incredible thing I've ever seen. You were a native?
Yeah, and a dressmaker. That's all I saw.
I think that's so weird. You were a dressmaker, I was a tailor. Isn't that interesting? You want some?
I recommend it. But while he's in this, it's also called the paradise stage, he began to hear a chorus of angels leading him into this final and most transcendent stage, which was an emergence into an all-encompassing, omniscient core, or God, which was all light and love and oneness. He said he experienced an overwhelming, unconditional love and a brilliant, indescribable light. But how do we live when we truly know that death is not the end? Another near-death experiencer, Mellon Thomas Benedict, who faced terminal cancer in 1982 and returned with complete healing, not a trace of cancer after this experience. He describes his near-death experience as a journey through realms of love and light, and he reflected, "What I learn and what I believe to this day is that the physical body we inhabit provides the most beautiful vehicle ever imagined to experience time and space and to encounter the universe in ways that cannot be experienced while we are in spirit."
Before I died, I was a real pessimist. I really believed that the human race was going to destroy the planet and overpopulate it and destroy everything on its way. And I really believed that because I started perceiving the humanity as a rampant, out-of-control cancer, that's why I developed my cancer. And I got a real good case of it, a terminal case. The difference is that when I came back, that everything I went over thinking was a problem was actually part of a solution. I had not been seeing it in a big enough picture. And I was given the big picture of what all of this is about on the planet, including nuclear missiles, toxic waste, population, karma, the incarnation, all of these things. I was educated. When I was in front of the light, not being a very religious person at the time, the first thing the light changed into, because I came from a Western Christian-oriented background, I saw Jesus. And I mean, I really saw the vibration of Jesus. It's for real. It's a true vibration. And then it changed into like Buddha and Krishna. I'm talking about the real vibrations. I really know these things are for real. And it started changing into many, many other kinds of gods and people that have been on the planet to enlighten us. And I asked the light, I said, well, who is the real God? What's the real God? And the light said something to me that absolutely electrified everything that I'd ever known. And the light said, I am. But what that meant was that each and every one of us is God, period. We are all made of God's stuff. And the I am meant that you are, I am, we all are God. And then I was given the big picture of what Godhead may be, and we have a very limited concept of it right now in our system. You know, there are many people still thinking that God is some sort of male figure with a beard up there. But what was really speaking to me was what I call the great self. The entire universe, the entire Godhead experience of which we're a part of is one large, one great self that's ever expanding, that never had a beginning and doesn't have any ending. As we move into fifth dimensional awareness, we become incredibly sensitive to everything around us. We are rapidly moving into an awareness that includes the past, the present, and the future. It includes seeing angels, it includes seeing energy and dimensions, incredibly more psychic sensitivity in the human being now than ever before. And this sensitivity is also the very sensitivity that is driving some people crazy.
So this life is a unique spiritual opportunity. This insight invites us to live intentionally, fully, and courageously. So here are 3 practical ways to embody this understanding. The first is to live with love. Speak it, act it, embody it in every moment. Let love guide your thoughts, your words, and your actions. See it as the ultimate expression of your eternal nature, because you are. You are love. Second, honor memory. Remember those who have gone before. Light a candle. Tell a story. A happy memory. Say a prayer. Write a letter. speak out loud. These are acts of sacred communication with the souls of the dead. Thanking the ancestors who carried us here and are still with us anchors us in gratitude and connection with Spirit. Finally, take courage. Fear loses its power when we remember that the soul is eternal. We are never truly alone. We are never abandoned. Life itself is spirit in motion. And we are co-creators in this wonderful, beautiful, ongoing divine drama. Every day, choose to see the unseen. Feel the presence of Spirit in your breath, in your smile, in your handshake, and in your service. When you open your heart to this truth, life becomes holy. Life is miraculous. Life is a constant celebration of the eternal. So let's affirm, I am eternal in spirit, alive in this moment. Love flows through me and all I hold dear. I honor the past, embrace the present, and walk boldly into the future. Life is eternal, love never dies, and I am one with Spirit now and forever. As Revelation 21:4 reminds us, humanity is moving toward the stature of the Christ. He will wipe every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither will mourning, nor outcry, nor pain be any more. The former things have passed away. Breathe deeply and allow this truth to settle within your heart. May we carry this awareness into our daily lives, into our homes, and into our communities. May we greet each day with courage, gratitude, and joy. And may we feel the presence of those who have gone before, guiding us, loving us, reminding us that the Christ of all life never ceases, never rests, and never leaves. And if you see a ghost tonight, don't worry. It probably just wants to know your Wi-Fi password. Amen.
Folks that are here that have not met you and that maybe never even heard of Tom Sawyer other than back in the book with the straw hat.
Well, that's easy to start out with. First of all, I'm sorry.
You want to fill them in on?
Okay, we'll do the super capsulized version of what happened to me and why I'm sitting here in front of this camera talking to you today. 11 years ago, I had a truck follow me right here in my driveway, and had the truck jacked up with the front wheels off it. The truck at that time weighed about 2 tons, and the truck fell on me and fell right across my chest, right in this area here, and squeezed all the air out of me and made me unable to breathe for a little over 15 minutes in time. Many things took place in the accident, including me having very profound personalized and private thoughts, such as how degrading this was, that if in fact I die this way, that it wasn't good enough for me. Now, I don't mean that arrogantly. I mean that I was a very good mechanic, and this wasn't fair because it wasn't my fault that the truck fell on me. There were air pockets underneath the asphalt, and the driveway collapsed. So it wasn't my fault, it was asphalt. With that excuse and so on, and with that rationale that I simply had to be where I was and be still, there's a few things that you should know about me at the time. One of which was that 50 pounds ago I was a national caliber athlete. I was in excellent physical shape, very strong. I was very assured of myself and my abilities. I was, as I mentioned, a good mechanic. I had the ability to hold my breath for over 3 minutes in time. I usually did my own work. It's not that I wouldn't allow anybody else to do work for me, but I was usually, very honestly, the most qualified, including working on my truck. So, should also stereotype myself a little bit and tell you that at the time I was an agnostic. I had been brought up a Christian Catholic, and in spite of the so-called learning and making my communion and confirmation, around the age of 13, I decided that that was very bluntly just religious stuff, hocus pocus baloney, and that it really had no bearing on my personal life. In other words, very bluntly, I had no personal relationship with any kind of a God. With the truck falling on me, that changed very instantly and very dramatically. And it wasn't just that I almost died, it was very bluntly that I was able to see God, experience that, and realistically for the first time in my life. Also, I was pretty much an all-American guy at the time. I was 33 years old and married with 2 children. At that time, my son Todd was 10 years old. He was assisting me, working on the truck. And as soon as the truck fell, he ran in and called the paramedics. So some of the scientific information we get about the accident was, for instance, it was called in at 7:41 in the evening, and shortly after 8 o'clock that evening, the paramedics arrived at the driveway and rushed up to assist me in my extrication and my survival. During that time, many things happened, one of which was, as I was going unconscious after a couple of futile, I know it's something like that, futile attempts to ward off the oxygen deprivation and the onset of the unconscious state, you know, where you shake your head no and try real hard. Some intensive thoughts were in my head that it's more important to struggle and hang on and live than it is to just give in and die. And that was at the point where it was physically acceptable or okay to just give in and pass out and have all the pain and suffering and so on like that just go away. And in spite of that, you know, I did care about life. An attitude like that is important in the last few seconds of a traumatic experience or a state of disease, especially if it's terminal. And I felt that way, and I was appreciative of the last few seconds in time to struggle a little further. But I did get to the point of unconsciousness, and as I went unconscious, I had the experience of seeing, and when I say seeing, I don't necessarily mean seeing with my physical eyes. It was seeing, at least hypothetically, the experience, it felt exactly the same as seeing. And what I was seeing was blotches or flashes of various colors. They were very beautiful, it was very enjoyable. I don't have any scientific explanation whatsoever for what this was or why I saw it in the way that I did, but I first tried to describe it and said that it was all the colors of the spectrum. And then I learned and realized that that includes infrared and ultraviolet. And I still say that it certainly was that. And that I experienced the extreme visual connotation of various colors. And colors such as opalescences, phosphorescences, fluorescences, that of course I have not been able to duplicate, and it was very enjoyable and nice. Well, with no explanation as to either exactly what that was or why I experienced it, even 11 years later, the experience went on to just having a state of unconsciousness. I had a feeling of being completely unconscious, everything blank, and nothing to describe at all, and then rather instantaneously having the experience of waking up from that state. And when I say waking up, I didn't get up because the truck was still on me. I didn't necessarily open my eyes or take a breath. I wasn't able to do that. So what we're really talking about is from a physically unconscious state where the last few heartbeats were experienced and my heart was stopped, and of course all the other organs were slowing down to the point, and this experience of absolutely waking up was just my mind and possibly some brain functioning going on, and the perceptions that I had is what I'm describing to you now. Those perceptions were feeling absolutely awake. Everything was vivid and clear. I had the same sensations as being able to hear accurately, see as well as I've ever seen, and I've always had good vision. You know, even though I'll describe to you paradoxically that there was no well, I lost my train of thought when a friend just wrote back. Yeah, there was a sense of timelessness. I realized that very bluntly there was no such thing as time. And in this timeless state, I had the experience of, for instance, trying to experience where am I, what's going on here, and looking around just as though you would do it physically. It was just, you know, same feeling, same sensations as that. Looking around and thinking, what in the world is this, where am I? And being able to only see absolute darkness. There were no identifiable objects. It was absolutely black, opaque. And with this realization, even though I wasn't frightened by this was still comfortable, the next experience that I can describe to you is having that darkness or blackness just take the shape of a tunnel. Shape of a tunnel is the best description as far as I'm concerned. I've heard other people in the last 11 years say a funnel, a tube, an abyss, various other descriptions, but I like the idea of a tunnel because it's cylindrical. It extends forward, in my circumstance, to infinity. It was ever so slightly funnel-shaped, allowing for the depth perception. With this realization and this sighting of this tunnel, I had the feeling that I was moving forward, and it was straightforward, well-balanced, comfortable, and through the center of this tunnel. That forward motion increased in speed, although there was not wind, vibration, sound. There was certainly a visual connotation of the tunnel flashing around me or me going through the center of it, but there were no G-forces like we would normally experience in acceleration. With this acceleration, however, the first empirical piece of knowledge that I gained from this out-of-body experience or near-death experience was that I realized, and I simply realized it, let's say intuitively, I realized that I attained the speed of light or possibly faster than the speed of light. At that time in my life, I didn't understand what that meant. I didn't realize that it was physically impossible. I didn't realize anything at all about Albert Einstein's theories on relativity, and I was not aware of mathematically that it's basically 186,000 miles a second. I knew that it was very, very fast, but more importantly and more accurately, I knew that whoever I was at that time, and I felt as though I was myself, Tom Sawyer and all my character and characteristics, that I was going or functioning at the speed of light. So whisking through this tunnel, the next thing that I'll describe to you is that way off and paradoxically to infinity was this minute little speck of light. That light was very profound. It was the first identifiable object that I was able to perceive or see. So I was eagerly anticipating, what is that? And isn't that beautiful? And with that realization, it was even more profound because that little speck of light way, way off in the distance was very bluntly the most beautiful thing that I'd ever experienced in my life. It was absolute total beauty. It was white. Sometimes we like to dress up white by saying blue-white, like we try to grade diamonds and such. It was absolutely pure. It was brighter than something that would immediately blind you. It was the brightest thing that I'd ever experienced, brighter than 100,000 carbon arcs or welder's torches, various things of brightness that we could measure. It was at least the equivalent in brilliance of a supernova. It was also, other than beautiful, it represented a type of love that I'd never experienced. Now I can use the phrase unconditional love, although I wasn't familiar with that phrase at the time of this accident. As I got closer to it, it's incorrect for me to say that the light got better, because I'm trying to describe perfection for you. Once you attain perfection, you can't get better than that. You can't have something improved. And in spite of that dilemma, it is paradoxically accurate for me to say that it was more perfect, it was better and better. And in the last several years, a realization has come that if you have something that is perfect and you're observing it or you're experiencing it, it can't get any better. But you and your perceptions can get clearer and more accurate. So as I developed a better sense of what it was I was experiencing, that's where I have the sensation or the realization that things got better or clearer or more accurate. There was some type of a deceleration in this tunnel, because the next thing that I want to describe to you is that I was motionless. I was stopped at the end of the tunnel, and I had a realization, let's just call it intuitive again, that behind me was this tunnel. I did not turn around to verify it, say to turn around and look at it. It wasn't necessary. Much more importantly was before me, and then covering the entire vista before me, just totally engulfing everything, was the light. As I approached the end of that tunnel, I realized that the light itself was emanating from outside the end of the tunnel. It was not the very end of the tunnel. It was engulfing whatever the realm was outside this tunnel. And again, that might just be symbolism. It might just be a focused perception onto the aspect of the light. And once that perception is focused accurately enough to perceive any degree of it, then there's no longer the need for this symbolic tunnel or funneling or focusing. I like those phrases. Interesting. I've never quite told it that way. I think it shines a little different light on the subject. Before me was the light, and instantaneously, and I want to emphasize instantaneously, the light emanated to me in a telepathic way. And you know, let me first say and get out of the way that, very bluntly, the light is God. The light is the light of Jesus Christ. The light of Buddha enlightened. And of course, if you're offended by this Eastern analogy that this man Buddha that I'm saying is also the light and God, I'm not saying that he, the man Buddha, is God. I'm saying that a man who became Buddha and extremely enlightened has passed on and is now in that light, and therefore God-like. That's what I'm describing, but as I first perceived it, I just perceived that the light emanated to me and made me understand that some most profound things, such as, and I'll role play again to describe the dialogue of sorts that I've kind of translated. For instance, the light emanated to me, Tom, you have to be where you are and in the condition that you are, and before you is the light, which is redundant because I was already experiencing that. You have an opportunity, Tom, to perceive or desire or ask any question, any series of questions, and regardless of what the question is or how intensive the knowledge is necessary to even understand a proper questioning, that as soon as you formulate the desire for such a question, that the absolute, unequivocal correct answer will be emanated instantly back to you. Now, what I'm describing is a phrase that I've coined, which is very accurate, and it's superluminal telepathic communication, in that it's a telepathic type of rapport, just thought pattern to thought pattern, that functions at or faster than the speed of light. Little loose ends tied together, and this was not just logical deductive reasoning. This is something that I was shown and told as part of the experience. In other words, if you're so inclined to understand anything at all about clairvoyance, it would be a telepathic, clairvoyant type rapport that is extremely pure or functioning at such a speed that is outside the realm of this physical existence and outside time. If you function at the speed of light, you cease to function in what we know as in time. So your perceptions would be at the speed of light, and any kind of dialogue would be not held by the bonds of timelessness or timeliness, and that if you ask something, you can be given the answer simultaneously. I asked many questions, and to capsulize that, just to give you an idea of what would be a question that I would ask. Again, it's incorrect for me to say first question, second question, third question, because you're missing the point of the timelessness and missing the idea behind superluminal telepathic communication. But one of the questions, which in all probability would have been a first, would be, am I okay? And I didn't mean am I alive or dead, because I'd already experienced my heart stopping and realizing that I was at least clinically dead. In that capacity, I was asking, am I okay? In other words, in God's eyes, am I all right? Am I okay? And I can kind of smile and brag and say thumbs up that, for the moment being at least, that everything was all right. And then the most profound questions, in hindsight of this experience, I would kind of damn myself and say, why didn't I ask for a particular cure to a type of cancer, so that now that I'm here and having had this experience, I could share that with a major university and be able to facilitate something that was not selfish or just about me and share it with the rest of the world. Well, the timelessness of that seemed to be more timely than anything else, in that I was limited as to the degree of questions and so on. I wasn't limited to the type of question, but just the degree of my perceptions of what I needed to know before I went on with this experience. And one of those questions was very bluntly, what about the Jesus stuff? And in that capacity, understanding again that I was an agnostic at the time, but at least curious enough to know, like many people question, come on, all kidding aside, what about that Jesus stuff? I mean, is it real or isn't it? And, you know, some people can have very profound faith, and they can fervently believe and follow Christianity and be a good Christian, and still that little bit of doubting Thomas in them saying, you know, some of the fine details perhaps of who was Jesus the Christ, what is the Christ, what is the Christ light, where is it, how is it perceived, am I that, are you that? So very bluntly I asked, what about the Jesus stuff? And of course that's a translated version of the desire to know all that. So it was emanated, for the moment being at least, thumbs up in the affirmative, that it was okay. And that one singular question, that one desire, really the questions were answered, was there this man, Jesus of Nazareth? Did he walk around and have a ministry, so to speak? Was he divine? Is he divine? Where is he now? In other words, what about all the Jesus stuff? And that was answered. I was able to see that, perceive it. Well, that's what I call the question and answer period. Part of that question and answer period was a realization that I had a choice, and the choice for me was that I could desire to return to normal life, and the instant that I had that desire, the instant that I perceived that or wished for that it would happen absolutely, and that there would be no strings attached, that as soon as I decided that I would wish to return to normal life, it would happen. The other half of that choice was that I could stay and become part of that light. And you have to understand first where I am and what I'm describing. I'm talking about perfection. I'm talking about the heaven state, I'm talking about God. And even though life is beautiful, we've got flowers around us and all kinds of relationships and learning experiences, what I'm really describing is an opportunity to finalize that and move on to the next stage in our lives, which is what we call after death. And of course, to be in that state of perfection is not much of a choice at all. Many other people I found have a choice given to them, and they feel deep in their heart that they're unfinished business, that they have to come back for a reason, or that they're just not ready to die, or they can't quite handle this much right now, or that there's a selfishness of sorts, meaning that they don't feel it's proper for they to leave their children, or the many excuses why people would desire to return from a clinical death state, or what we call life after death. For me, it was not much of a choice at all. And I do have to interrupt the flow of this description and say that prior to my decision, I had to also have a complete total life review. And you cannot have a decision will not be allowed without the person's perception of their own life, and perceived not only as they have lived it, but perceived with total knowledge, unconditional love, and learning experiences that you have learned subconsciously and superconsciously that you may not be intellectually or psychologically aware of. I had the life review, and I'll describe that in a minute or two, but I want to go on with the choice that I was given. I was given this choice, and only after having a life review, very bluntly, I chose to stay and become part of that light. The problem with that, and trying to sort this out with researchers and trying to describe it to people like yourself, is that there was a string attached to the decision to stay and become part of that light. And that it was emanated to me that if I decided to stay and become part of that light, that at that point, I would cease to function normally. I would no longer be exactly myself, that I would be an actual integral part of the light, or bear with me if I say that I would be light. And that would disallow me forever after to choose on my own decision, with my own characteristics and character, to return to normal life. So in other words, bluntly and simplistically, I could choose to return to normal life and it would happen. If I chose to stay, I would never be able to choose to return again. Well, now that you understand that, I did choose to stay and become part of that life. And as sorry as I feel for myself sometimes, I don't have any explanation as to exactly how, like manipulatively or physically speaking, exactly how I was able to return to normal life. Or if there's a rationale or a reason or an excuse, I was never told or shown a single or a multiple excuse or excuses for being here now. I'm pleased that I'm here now. I'm satisfied. I'm probably the happiest person that you'll ever meet, generally speaking. I have my ups and downs. I have physical problems. I even have to experience major surgery at times. So all the very realistic parts of living are very much back in my life. And I do honestly at times feel a little selfish and a little sad, in other words, lonely for that state of perfection. I'm very eagerly anticipating my natural death. But this, what we call life, is temporary. And if it be for a job that I haven't finished, if it be that I was not really qualified and got kicked out of heaven, it doesn't really matter too much, the rationale behind it. The important point is that I have returned, and that I've been very, very fortunate in being able to facilitate many things that I certainly would never have been able to accomplish. And trust me, I'm not being arrogant or egotistical now, but things that really would not have been able to be facilitated if I had not come back. In other words, with that which I was enhanced by, and with that which I was allowed to learn, I'm trying not to take credit for it. In other words, it's not my fault, it's only Ash's fault. In other words, there also a little phrase that I worked my way up through, and if you've ever heard the phrase that there is no justice in nature. There's only nature. In other words, the lion does kill an antelope, and that's part of the food chain. And it's not the poor lion is going to go hungry or the poor antelope is going to be killed. In other words, there's no justice in nature. There's only nature, and it was by God. And as rational as we try to be and justifiable, you should not question God. You should question yourself and your personal relationship with God, but you should not question the workings of nature to that degree. And you should not make those judgment calls that a rabbit should live, but a mouse should not. And in that capacity, there does not have to be an excuse or a rationale for me to be kicked out of heaven or sent back.
In coming back, however that did happen, are there some people and some situations that you were made aware of that you needed to be here to
Yes,
touch?
Carol, even you.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, are you really asking, in other words, as soon as I returned, was I aware of?
Well, I don't know if it's that or as you're living and you come across situations, you have a sense of where your time needs to be spent or the certain people you need to connect with.
I've experienced a lot of that. I'd never heard of the word synchronicity, as we use it so commonly now. I thought that there were coincidences and things of that nature, and that there was a lot of luck. There was some just victims of circumstances. It was very simplistically thought out, if I thought of it at all. And now I see that there are many, many synchronistic series of events that can both lead you, even manipulate you, but you have also free will, so that, in regarding any given circumstance, you can accept or reject anything.
Do you have free will, Simon?
Yes, I do. Ooh, that was a loaded question, and I answered it, and I was smiling. Yes, I really do. And as much as any human being, I do. I've been given some knowledge, and in other words, my five senses and several other senses have been enhanced. And I still will agree that I have free will over all of that. But with some of that knowledge, there comes a responsibility too. See, I want to tell you that I have responsibilities, but they're not manipulative. In other words, I'm not a victim, and I'm not being led. Although I realize additional responsibilities. Do I have free will, and can I just stop talking, and can I commit suicide? Can I become lustful? Can I become anything that I might desire to be, or allow myself to fall into? Any of these problems, often problems that people experience on a day-to-day basis? Yes, I can do any of that. I can deplete my physical body, as I have done to a large degree. Some manipulative on my part, in other words, on purpose, and other things that I don't have control over, such as the degree of the injury to my back. I didn't have control over that. It's something that, it was an accident, and I have to take the responsibility for that to a degree, but that wasn't my fault either. So if you think in terms of being a victim of circumstances or being manipulated in that way, well, maybe that's so, but I don't feel that way. I feel as though I am in control of myself, because free will is probably the most powerful gift that God has given the human condition. I've talked about that in great detail before, and I don't think I can talk about that right this moment. There were individuals that I was aware of, and I got, let me first by kind of saying that I was basically a rather ignorant person regarding subjects as we're talking about now. And it was very strange for me to have a very profound perception of individuals such as Max Planck, Niels Bohr, Werner Heisenberg, and eagerly anticipating meeting them. I didn't know what city they lived in, but I knew them very well. I knew them as though they were a next-door neighbor. And it was shocking and a little sad for me to be told by another physicist that, well, Tom, you talk about them as though you would like to meet them. And I said, well, I would. And then he announced to me that they had died and that they were no longer alive. And of course, through my ignorance, I didn't realize that they were famous physicists around the turn of the century. So that was a little shocking to me. It was strange. But I had that profound awareness as though they were a cousin or a next-door neighbor. That's one aspect. In other words, I was aware of a personal relationship with individuals who had passed on. I became aware of individuals walking around and so on, going to conferences and what have you. I would see someone in a crowded room and just walk over and introduce myself, in other words, socially, politely, but profoundly knowing that I had to say something specifically to that individual. Sometimes it would be only that information, that whoever that person is over there, I must tell them about the Meissner effect or some such subject. And then it's even come to pass, like I just mentioned, the Meissner effect, which is in physics. And I might mention it out loud and then have to go to a book and look it up. Because it might be very important for me to say something about it, which, let's say spiritually, I might have been aware of, but then in my own personal interest, I would have to look it up to find out what it really meant. So does that mean that I was sent back with bits and pieces of information to help other people? Sure. I mean, okay, I've already accepted that, and it's happened so many times that it's not just a fluke or a coincidence, or I'm not playing a super head game, or even a psychic head game, which is possible. You can be psychic to a degree and know enough to play what I'll call head games or mind games, just for the purposes of sensationalism and even to make a profit or excuses and rationales like that. And I haven't really fallen into that. I'll call it a trap for me. In other words, that would be a trap for me. I would not wish to do that. And in 11 years, I haven't done that. Should I just briefly say, because we're talking about the experience, summarize that I had a complete life review. I was given additional information. I blended into that light. And in the very last stage that I can possibly remember with any accuracy, it was a return trip through the tunnel. Again, with no excuses or rationale, but and I slammed back into my body. At the same time, the truck was lifted off me, and I was revived.
Okay, Tom, going back to your reference to God's unconditional love, how does that relate to sin?
To sin? To sin. Yes, I tried that once. Yeah. Well, I don't know. If somebody else would have asked me that question, if that'd be a question, if somebody else would have asked me that, I would have probably, like one-on-one, I would have asked them, what is your definition of sin? And work off of that. I think the difference between ourselves and as we, and I'm kind of stereotyping or generalizing everybody, that we have a perception of sin, and of course it's self-imposed, even if it be a cultural conditioning. In other words, you're taught that's good, that's bad, and that's so bad that it's a sin, as opposed to something that's not quite as bad is not really a sin, it's just a little bit bad. Further than that, you do have natural instincts, such as if you do something to hurt someone's feelings, you will intuitively know, even ahead of time, that this will probably hurt someone's feelings. Or if you do act it out or say it or do it, you will then experience that this hurt a person's feelings, and then you have immediately two choices. You can block it, psychologically shun it, and justify it, and do all those things and justify that, no, you didn't sin or you didn't do a bad thing, that it was either justifiably bad or that it was just plain bad, but so what? or totally block it, that may or may not be a sin at that point in time. I think the biggest problem with sin is that I'm talking me for me, and therefore generalizing about everybody, is that the things, the sins of omission and commission that we perform or that we are responsible for in a lifetime are vastly unperceived. In other words, the numbers of inadequacies, the numbers of perpetuated things, in other words, to perform or to do something that is sinful or negative or bad, is that we don't even perceive them on a conscious level.
I guess what I'm trying to relate to is that most of us were brought up to feel that when you pass over, there'd be this scale that this big bad
judgment.
person
Yeah.
getting into judgment,
Yeah,
right?
the judgment, sure.
That this is what you did good and this is what you did bad, and based on all of that, you would either go to heaven or go to hell. And in terms of what you experienced with God's unconditional love,
I think that as opposed to having a transitional state that would include an aspect of purgatory or a hellish experience or a time frame, if you will, that you don't go right from this life, the express lane, right into the light or into the heaven state, that can be perceived with some degree of accuracy as a cause and effect relationship from ill-gotten gains or negative deeds, things of that nature. But generally, I was rather shocked, if you will. I mean, one of the most profound things I learned is that there was no such thing as hell. That the things that I had been taught and shown were terrible deeds, and that don't you dare say or do this, or don't you dare think this way, or act this way, is that that was not, in fact, a sin, and it wasn't perceived as that. Plus, the fact that God, certainly the God that I experienced, is an all-loving God, and that even though there are a very few rare circumstances where in a transitional state or after death, I'll say it that way, after death, there can be a reparation or a further learning experience. It's not from condemnation. It would be more perceived as just a magnificent, loving gesture on the part of God to give you not really a second chance, but to give you the opportunity for a learning experience to overcome our human inadequacies, be they psychological, spiritual, or any other way, physical, all of
Only a thin veil between us, my loved one so precious and true. Only as mist before sunrise, I am hidden away from your view. Often I come with my blessing and strive all your sorrow to share. At night when you're quietly sleeping, I kiss down your eyelids in prayer. Only a thin veil between us. The morning the angels will come, and then in a bright land of beauty, we'll gather with loved ones at home, home, beautiful home, no longer in sadness to roam, but safe the kingdom of glory will dwell with the loved ones at home. Only a thin veil between us. The morning the angels will come, and then in a bright land of beauty we'll gather with loved ones at home, home, beautiful home, no longer in sadness to roam, but safe in the kingdom of glory, will dwell with the loved ones at home.
With a click, with a shock, from a jungle domina, under the light. Something's coming from away, but to catch me.
From the beginning of motion picture history, Hollywood has tried to show you what the afterlife is really like.
Good afternoon and welcome to Judgment City.
You have any idea what's going on?
No?
Well, in a nutshell, you're here to defend your life, and I'm going to help you.
Defend my life?
Finally,
Wow!
the first true story of what happens after you die.
Where am I? Is this heaven?
No, it isn't heaven.
Is it hell?
Actually, there is no hell. Although I hear Los Angeles is getting pretty close.
That's life.
Albert Brooks,
You make me think of my little poodle.
Meryl Streep,
I think I might have been a heavy-set man at one time.
Rick Torn, Lee Grant, Buck Henry, in a new film by Albert Brooks.
So I'm on trial for being afraid.
Well, first of all, I don't like to call it a trial. Second of all, yes.
If you see one movie before you die,
I love you. I love you.
This is damning. Don't worry about it.
ご愁傷様です。皆さんには7日後天国へ行っていただきます。そのためにここで皆さんの思い出を再現した映画を作らなければなりません。映画をご覧になって当時の記憶が蘇った瞬間、あなたは天国へと旅立つのです。
天国に行けるってことですか？
あなたの大切な思い出を一つ選んでいただけますか？
何にも覚えてない。彼の息だけ。
その過去の同じ瞬間だけ生きていくことっていうのはものすごく辛いことなんですけど、僕にとって。
おじさん、いつ選んだんですか？まだ。
生きた証？ほとんどの人はそんなもん残せないんだからさ。
でもたまに考えるんですけどね、何のためにあるんですかね、うちらの仕事って。死んだ人間の思い出再現するなんてさ。
選ぶんでしょ？あの人との思い出を選ぶんでしょ？
Thank you. Can a crystal pyramid have anything to do with weather and atmospheric control?
Yes, it can, because it is the purest of reflection.
Thank you. What is happening when a person has multiple personalities? Is it our identification with levels, or could it be earthbound souls expressing through them?
Well, first of all, it's an absolute lack of effort in the responsibility that we all have, known as personal responsibility. And there are souls that enter your planet, as they enter many planets, who, as part of their lessons, having flunked them so many times, they experience what you understand as multiple personalities. They're not taking care of the house that they have earned. They're not securing when they leave it, and they leave it frequently. They are not facing their responsibility to see that the windows and the doors, they're all secured. So some passing stranger just doesn't waltz or walk on in. And so that's a lack of effort on a person's personal responsibility. And you understand it as multiple personality, and there are many earthbound, so-called earthbound spirits still attached to the flesh and bone. You see, when a person is attached to the form and to the limit, then they haven't broadened their horizons. No effort's being made to broaden their horizons. Now, there's a sure way, if you want to be earthbound, you want to remain on earth, fearful of what you call death, and you don't want to leave. There are many, untold millions of people who have left their flesh and bone, who remain on the earth planet, and who periodically get to experience the sensations of the fleshy body by using someone else's body for whenever they can, and whenever and however long that they're able to remain in there, because it does take a concentrated will and desire. And the only thing is that you have no guarantee if you're going to be able to get in one of those bodies, though there are many around that people aren't responsible for. And those earthbound spirits are able to get in there and take possession for a time and get a little charge, and of course, the more often they're able to use your body that way, then the more often they're going to, and the easier it is going to be for them. I have stated before, and I will state again, that if you don't take care of what you're responsible for, and what you have earned in evolution, there's someone waiting to take care of it for you. Now, how they will take care of it remains to be seen, but I can assure you they will not do the job that you think that they should be doing, and there is no way that you can control them, for you've given up control of what you're responsible for. So, whoever gives up control of what they're responsible for is in no position to control that is around them, for they've given up that right, you see. And so my students, all of you, should consider making greater effort to remember, when you don't make effort to control your mind and control your body, someone else is making great effort to do it. And it happens more often than you as students realize at this time.
Thank you. Why would the original person not remember the other personalities expressing?
Because they're not at home. You know, something takes place in your house, and you're out to lunch someplace, who knows how far away, and you're not on duty and on guard, and someone goes in and does all kinds of things in your house. How can you expect to remember what you're not aware of? You're not aware, you're not there. So you see, when your body can be any place, your house, and if you're out to lunch, out to dinner, and who knows where else you're out to, you can't expect to remember what somebody else who came in and used your house, the one you're responsible for, well, you don't know what they did with it. The only thing you could possibly experience is that they abused your foot or did something else with some other part of your anatomy, and when you get back in, you say, well, this isn't where I left this. What happened here? Now, you may have that experience if they've not been too kind to your house and been a bit abusive with it. Yes.
Thank you. It was said to me that it is better to stay in the background. Why is it better?
Well, if you have a problem in placing yourself in the foreground and you are not yet sufficiently evolved to do so, then wisdom reveals, until you're able to strengthen yourself, that you remain in the background.
Thank you. And how about the people who did and do speak up and out, like Martin Luther King Jr.? What causes a person to feel they need to do that? What are the benefits and drawbacks?
Well, there's certainly a lot of benefits, detriments, or drawbacks, if you want to call it. It depends on your own evolution and the work that you have to do. You will know from within yourself if you have a particular job to do, and the longer you procrastinate on that job that you have to do, the more difficult it's going to be for you to do the job that you know you have to do. You're all evolving and have certain work to do, and if you say, well, I don't know what my job is, it's because you haven't made the effort to be honest with yourself to find out in the first place. Otherwise you would know. And you probably many times face the job that you have to do and you just refuse to accept what it is. And you don't like your merit system. Well, it doesn't matter whether a person likes their merit system in evolution or not. They're not going to escape it by not liking it. They're only going to make it more difficult to face when finally it's faced when all the chickens come home to roost. And it doesn't matter whether you like the chickens when they come home to roost. It's guaranteed by the very law that you created them.
Thank you. How can I best express my soul talent and stop stifling it? How do you find your way? Let me try again. How do you find your own way of expressing?
Well, are you referring to the cameraman? Are you referring to my channel or to me? Do you know? Well, it doesn't matter, because there's only one simple answer. Stop being so concerned. You see, concern's the cloud that keeps you from finding and doing what you're supposed to do. You have a soul talent, there's no problem. Get it out of the mental world and it will do its work.
Thank you. What is the single most important thing we can do to maintain good physical health on the earth realm?
The single most important thing we can do to maintain good health, physical health in the earth realm?
Yes.
The single most important thing you can do is to think correctly. To think correctly. To think right. To stop all this other foolishness. Whoever thinks right has the right attitude. It's a matter of maintaining the right attitude. Attitude being thought patterns being created by thoughts. So, right thinking is right action, and right action is the right body, the right health, the right wealth, and the right joy of living. Change your attitudes, the single most important thing you can do.
Thank you. If the earth is of the fire realm, why is there so much water on it, and what does it mean to us?
Well, when you take the water and you put it on the fire, you have expression. And no one can deny that your planet Earth is not a planet of expression. I find limitless expression on your planet Earth. And so, with the fire and water, you have what you understand as life form. You must have heat, and you must have moisture, in order to have life form as you know it. And as I said, no one could possibly deny that your planet does not have many life forms, and certainly a fullness of expression.
Thank you. Our body is made up of much water and also salt. Does the salt tend to preserve the water or emotions? If this is so, what can we do to counterbalance that influence? And does sweating, which temporarily releases water and salt, help?
Well, first of all, one who perspires does find a little release from some of their conditions. But I have taught you that work is God's love made manifest, the manifestation of goodness. And in reference to the question of salt, the preserver, does it preserve water? While it preserves that which is created in water, of course it does. That's where your judgments are created. They're created in water, in the water center. They're preserved by the salt that you are. And what can you do to root out some of those little things you've created there in that water center? Well, turn up the fire. Turn up the fire inside. Because you see, you have you have this water center and you have this fire. Now, if you want a new expression, well, you got to build up the fire inside and make some thrust. You know, without some fire, you don't make changes. You got to use the fire center in an intelligent way. Now, I'm not speaking of using the fire center by no effort and let it go drain down into you know what. I'm talking about the fire center and rising it up so it becomes the light of your world. You see, you take control of your mind, and then all that energy and that burner down there will go up and illumine your mind. And so that's the effort to be made. You want changes in these judgments of yours that are binding you and everything. Well, you go right down there and you build up that fire that's just laying there from lack of care and effort, and send that heat up to where it needs to be sent up there, and to get a little illumination in the mental world here, up at the top, right there, you say. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. If the good old days that are now don't feel as good as those of the past, is it our judgments which keep us from the feeling of present good? And how can we shake off the hand of those judgments?
Well, it certainly is, because you see, for example, the judgments that you are presently servicing are telling you it isn't like it used to be, the good old days. Today is not as good as the good old days, because they're not having their heyday in your consciousness. They're shadows of the past. They want to be fed, and if they can get the feeding from you, the energy and the attention, then they, of course, feel good, and you experience what that feeling is, and mistake that for what you are, is a satisfaction, you say. They're pleased and they're happy. And if you want to make changes in your life, you're going to have to learn to separate truth from creation. Until you make the effort to separate truth from creation, the past from the present, and the future from the present, and work with what is, then the change will not come about.
Thank you. When we go to other realms after death, do we have to experience death there in order to be free of the pain caused by fear?
One experiences death as long as one believes. For one believes as an expression of the created forms which are the effects of denial of what you are. So as long as one believes they are the flesh and bone, as long as one through identification is addicted to it, then one shall experience death, and one shall experience birth. Death and birth do not exist to one who has not denied what they are. Death and birth exist only to those who have denied what they are and believe what they are not.
Thank you. What effect does the astral world have on us if it's the ozone layer, and if we breathe and live in its atmosphere?
Well, it has much effect upon all people who, from lack of effort and understanding, are not in control consciously of their astral and mental bodies, then it has an effect of whatever we permit as an attitude of mind. We come into those realms of consciousness, and not having control of our astral and mental bodies, then they go off and go out to lunch and are used by the other astral forms to do their bidding for them. And then people wake up from a sleep and say how exhausted they are to themselves. They are not rejuvenated because they've gone off into an unconscious state. Their mental and astral bodies have gone out and been used by others to do the slave work of the senses.
Thank you. What dimension does one enter when they are in a true meditative state of mind?
Well, if you're in a true meditative state of mind, and your state of consciousness is above the lower centers, so to speak, then you can only enter spiritual realms of consciousness.
Thank you. What is the difference between organizing our thoughts and disciplining our thoughts?
Well, first of all, no thought is organized until it's first disciplined. For example, you must take control of a thought before you can get it organized. And in order to take control of a thought, a form that you have created, you have to first get it to respond to you. And you don't get anything to respond to you until you take control of it through a discipline or guidance. See, discipline, in truth, is guidance. So if you don't discipline a thought, then you are not guiding a thought. And if you don't guide a thought, there's no way possible you can control a thought. And if you don't control a thought, then don't even consider organization.
Thank you. What is the molecular composition of a positive thought?
Well, the molecular composition of a positive thought can be well stated in this one statement. A molecular composition is a composition that is completely free from concern. It is one that is filled with acceptance. Not the possibility of acceptance, absolute acceptance. For that creation guarantees the law. For example, when you create that condition in consciousness, it isn't a matter of accepting and doubting and accepting. It is the absolute acceptance. Now, that absolute acceptance is known as the power of faith. The power of faith. That is the power. And when all of your bodies, through your own discipline and guidance, are united for the sole purpose of absolute acceptance, you will have the manifestation, and you will speak your word forth into the universe. It shall not return to you void. It shall accomplish what you have sent it to do.
Thank you. What effect does weather have on the ozone layer?
Well, weather, of course, has varying effects upon the ozone layer. The most beneficial effect of weather, if you're speaking of weather, dry climates, or etc., moisture. Moisture is the most beneficial.
Thank you. How many facets are there in a perfect crystal?
How many facets are there in a perfect crystal? Well, I can tell you this. If you want it as perfect as your world of creation can make it, then you should consider 54.
Thank you. Does to spin in mental substance mean that one is grounded in the left hemisphere?
Indeed it does. Indeed it does. Let's say more likely they are satisfied in the hemisphere.
Thank you.
Whatever you're satisfied in, you're grounded in. I'm sure you'll all agree.
Thank you. In what way is the river of life related to our will?
Well, in what way is the river of life related to our will? Without our will, it doesn't flow, and therefore it's very related.
Thank you. What occurs to the river of life when we deny possibility and hope?
Then the flow of the river slows down.
Thank you. Would you please share with us an example of what you meant when you said you get inside of a thing by going counterclockwise?
Well, yes. This here is a very involved study, and I want to answer it as simple a way as I possibly can. To get into something, you must go out of it. Now, I know that sounds contradictory to you. Say, for example, you are tempted to get into something by getting involved with someone. Well, how do you get involved with a person? You get involved with a person by working counterclockwise of getting uninvolved with a person. Now, for example, you have a temptation, a desire, you'd like to be involved with that person over there. Now, what you actually start to do, you start to dissect that person. You start to see what you judge as their good points, their bad points, their strong points, their weaknesses. You start an analysis, an investigative process. Now, what you are actually doing in consciousness is you are going counterclockwise, taking them apart, dissecting them like you would under a microscope a little bug, you see, and seeing if they fit into all of the judgments that you have made. Now, if they fit, if you're able to squeeze them into the limits of your judgments, then what happens is, once that judgment has been made, yes, they do fit, you find yourself on the clockwise movement, and you understand that as now being involved. Well, the truth of the matter is you were getting involved when you were going through the dissecting process to see if they would fit in your consciousness, into your judgments, and were a sufficient number of your judgments satisfied. In other words, you have the generals of your judgments, you have the colonels, and down at the bottom there you have the back privates. You're not too concerned with the private judgments, but the generals and the five-star generals and the colonels and the majors, now they carry some weight. So that's what actually goes on. You see, we're talking about the counterspin and the spin of the consciousness, yes.
Thank you. The planet Uranus has 9 rings. Does it also then have schools of light?
The planet Uranus has 9, and it does have schools of light. However, it does not have the light of Saturn. And there's different schools between those 2 planets, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, you call that planet what?
Uranus?
Oh, you call it Uranus. All right, fine. You call it what you will. We understand what you're talking about.
Well, that was my ignorant understanding.
Well, no, that's fine. I do think that's what your planet calls it anyway. Go ahead.
Thank you. Love all life and know the light. Is this the effect of the perception that all life is an individual river of life and at some time an inseparable part of a greater river of life?
Well, it is the greater river of life. You are the river of life. You are inseparable. You are an inseparable part of that river. And so, love all life and know the light. Now, as we're closing, we only have a couple of minutes left. I did want to speak to you a little bit with so much interest in Halley's Comet. If you'll try to understand, you have been witnessing for eons of time now as this Halley's Comet passes by once in a lifetime, so to speak, on your planet, once in your lifetime. You are actually witnessing the birth of a planet. Now that's what it is. But you see, because your span of time and your identification with limit or form is so intense, then it is most difficult to conceive that a planet is being born. You're witnessing the actual birth of a planet. Now, I know that your scientists and things may describe this so-called Halley's Comet as the garbage can of the universe. Well, if you want to consider yourself as a form, the garbage can of the planet Earth, then that is fine. We do not consider the birth of a planet or a planet a garbage can. What it does, as it passes through, it gathers unto itself through its own force and movement. It attracts unto itself particles in space, and that's how a planet is born. And someday your scientist will accept that a planet is born. It is sent out from what you understand, a sun, a great fireball, and this little fireball is spit out into the universe. It travels through space, gathers up through its own attractive force and gravitational pull. It gathers unto itself various, what they now say in your world is garbage, and in eons yet to be, there's a new planet in the sky. Now, because it passes over your planet Earth, and approximately every 70-some years, it is gathering elements and things from the universe that are a part of the planet Earth. So you are witnessing the birth of a planet on which life as you know it shall reside at some time in the future. Thank you, and good day.
Unlike Fillmore, H. Emily Cady did not teach reincarnation, and actually Unity later edited out her original chapter on death from Lessons in Truth. But as H. Emily Cady emphasized, life is one and continuous, even though there come a seeming break, which we call death. So Cady invited seekers to recognize death as a return to the eternal unity of spirit. Eric Butterworth, with characteristic clarity, similarly reminded speakers, you do not live in the body, you live in consciousness. This message also echoes Jesus' affirmation, God is not the God of the dead, but of the living, for to him all are alive. Modern near-death experiences strongly resonate with New Thought and metaphysical insights, portraying consciousness persisting beyond the body into luminous, harmonious realms. Dr. Mary Neal, an orthopedic surgeon who drowned, describes a reality of brilliance and clarity, walking through a great and brilliant hall where I belonged, she says, echoing Swedenborg's vision of spiritual society. Howard Storm, a former atheist, experienced a divine presence of pure love, also affirming H. Emily Cady's teaching that spiritual progress centers on embodying divine love. Life reviews are a common feature of near-death experiences, and they reveal the consequences of one's thoughts and actions in life. Anita Morjani notes, the only thing that matters is love. How much we give, how much we serve. I often imagine the Summerland, as Davis described it, the realm beyond our earthly life, as a lot like the Albert Brooks movie Defending Your Life. In the movie, souls review their lives, face their fears, and come to an understanding of how they have grown in a supportive, enlightening environment. It's not a place of judgment or punishment, but a place of learning, laughter, and liberation. This metaphor resonates with the way I envision death, not as an ending, but as a continuation into fuller awareness, where what we have struggled with on earth becomes the very material of our ascent. Dr. Eben Alexander, a Harvard-trained neurosurgeon, experienced a profound near-death experience during a week-long coma caused by a rare bacterial meningitis. Despite his brain being inactive, he reported a journey into a realm of unconditional love and clarity. He states, "My experience showed me that the death of the body and the brain are not the end of consciousness, and that human experience continues beyond the grave." This again aligns with Swedenborg's vision of a spiritual society, suggesting that identity and awareness persist after bodily death. Similarly, Mellon Thomas Bennett, who died from terminal cancer in 1982 and returned with no signs of disease, describes his near-death experience as a journey through realms of light and love. He reflects, "What I learned and what I believe to this day is that the physical body that we live in actually gives us the most beautiful vehicle ever imagined to experience time and space, and to experience the universe in ways that cannot be experienced while you are in spirit." Benedict's experience underscores the idea that the physical realm is a unique opportunity for spiritual growth and understanding. These accounts affirm the metaphysical view of death as a passage into fuller awareness and spiritual growth rather than a cessation. So how do we live if we know that death is not the end? First, live with love. Speak it, act it, and embody it. Second, honor memory. Light a candle, tell a story, say a prayer, write a letter. These are forms of communication with the dead that help us remember the ancestors who carried us here. And third, take courage. Fear loses its power when we realize the soul is eternal. We are never truly alone. We are never abandoned. Life itself is spirit in motion, and we are co-creators in this ongoing divine drama. Every day, choose to see the unseen. Feel the presence of spirit in your breath, in your smile, in your handshake, and in your service. When you open your heart to this truth, life becomes holy, miraculous, and a constant celebration of the eternal. So let us affirm, I am eternal spirit alive in this moment. Love flows through me and all that I hold dear. I honor the past. I embrace the present. I walk boldly into the future. Life is eternal. Love never dies. And I am one with spirit, now and forever. And as it says in Revelation 21:4, look forward to a time when all of humankind shall have reached the stature of Christ, and he will wipe out every tear from their eyes, and death will be no more. Neither will mourning, nor outcry, nor pain be any more. The former things have passed away. May we carry this truth into our lives, into our homes, into our communities. May we greet every day with courage, gratitude, and joy. And may we feel the presence of those who have gone before, guiding us, loving us, and reminding us that the Christ of all life never ceases,